Welcome to Inside 11Alive News Investigates. I'm Cheryl Preheim. Right now, a behind-the-scenes look at the story impacting millions of travelers all across America. We're talking about the shortage of air traffic controllers. These are the men and women who guide every takeoff, landing, and flight path, ensuring our safety every day. But federal data reveals that critical industry is facing a major shortage. 11Alive News Investigates. Zach Merchant joining me now to talk more about it. So you've been looking into this issue, the implications specifically in Atlanta.
Yeah, and of course, when you talk about Atlanta, you know, it's a nationwide problem, but we are home, of course, to the world's busiest airport. So whenever there is an issue with air travel, Atlanta feels it. And as our investigation revealed, some air traffic control facilities right here in Atlanta are substantially understaffed.
I turned 206, left on Foxtrot, contact ground. State your mileage. Once you let pressure get to you, you won't be able to do the job.
Tyler Malik Harden is training to become an air traffic controller.
And it's all about hard work.
It's an industry that badly wants others to follow his lead.
We're about 3,000 air traffic controllers short right now.
That includes in Atlanta.
It's pretty substantial. The tower itself has real severe shortages.
Karen Fye is a professor at Georgia Tech. She was part of a team of researchers that, in May, published a congressionally mandated report on the shortage.
We are very close to not being able to handle the traffic that Atlanta has because we don't have sufficient staffing at all of the facilities the way we would want to have it.
Is this a safety risk for travelers?
Not yet. Not in a very strong sense.
She says most times when a facility is feeling the crunch, controllers will limit the number of planes moving through its airspace, which can lead to flight delays. In a statement, Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport said it has not experienced any operational impacts related to the ongoing national air traffic controller shortage. But that doesn't mean there's no shortage. 11Alive News Investigates analyzed FAA data from 3 core air traffic control sites in Atlanta. Taken collectively, they were 22% understaffed. Despite the challenges, programs at airstrips like this one in Dodge County, south of Macon, are working to find solutions to the shortage.
I think that this hopefully will make a dent. I do believe it will.
Angela Taylor is the air traffic control tower chief at Middle Georgia State University. Earlier this month, the school became one of the first in the nation to offer enhanced FAA-backed controller training.
Enter right downwind runway 20, report 3 miles.
We're offering a unique opportunity for students to be able to actually go to school for what you want to do and then come out of school doing what you want to do.
Experts say there is no single quick fix, but researchers, instructors, and the FAA hope programs like Middle Georgia State's will help students like Tyler get qualified and on the job faster.
That's something I've been looking forward to.
It's a feeling the FAA hopes many more potential future controllers share. Zach Merchant, 11Alive News Investigates.
So anyone who works and knows what it's like to work in a short staff environment, you're thinking 2 things. So does that mean longer shifts for other people? Does it mean double shifts? Because not having someone on shift is not an option when you're talking about air traffic control.
And that's something that we heard throughout the reporting process here too, folks. You know, the conversations would kind of happen in 2 buckets. They'd say, hey, here are all the problems we're facing, but these people take their jobs really seriously, and they're gonna show up and they're gonna do it because it is such a high stakes job. But you're right, with that dedication comes the fact that you've gotta get it done, and so it is not uncommon for folks to work extra hours, to work overtime, and that has a trickle-down effect, right?
Sure, there's another side of that because this is high pressure, high stakes. You don't want someone overworked, exhausted, not able to do it in the way they would want to do it simply because they're burned out.
Yeah, and that really gets to the core question of safety. Does this impact a traveler's safety? And of course, unfortunately, this year we have seen some really high profile and devastating air travel disasters. We saw what happened in Washington, D.C.
Sure.
We also saw the trouble that happened in Newark when an air traffic control facility known as a TRACON that handles flights departing and approaching an airport, they had some technical difficulties. I'm sure you remember, you if you're watching, remember that while they didn't cause any crashes, thank goodness, really spooked a lot of folks in this community. Karen Fye, who we heard from in this story, she's the Georgia Tech researcher who was a part of that group of about roughly a dozen researchers who looked into this. We asked her this question directly. Does this impact traveler safety? Here's what she said. Is this a safety risk for travelers?
Not yet, not in a very strong sense, but anytime you work people longer hours, fatigue creeps in. Now, we have recently, the FAA has also started to implement new shift policies, which do prioritize minimizing shifts that would cause additional fatigue, right? So going to back nights and then like a next morning or something like that. So that is helpful, but it does require a few more positions to be staffed in order to do this type of thing. I would say right now it is not a huge safety concern, but every time safety is always a combination of failures of things that you don't usually see coming, right? And so you're just starting to line things up in a way that we have less redundancy than we would want to have.
When you say something like not yet, I think the natural, follow-up is, well, when would it be a safety risk? I mean, it sounds like in the back of your mind, you are thinking about this.
I would say that what tends to happen before we get to real safety risk is that the folks that are doing this day in and day out and understand where people's breaking points are and when they're going to start to break down, they are aware and we start to throttle traffic. So when somebody starts throttling traffic, and it does happen occasionally, you saw it in Newark, it's been happening in other places, that is when somebody who is very well versed with the air traffic control managers and things like that, that's when they said, we don't have the capacity. We can't handle it right now. We're going to throttle traffic.
Yeah, when you said it is exactly what I was thinking about. What does yet mean? Something that I was thinking about in your initial story, you were really talking about these training programs to bring in new people into this profession that's really needed. But the other question is, how do you keep the people you've already got? And if they are working extra hours in high pressure situations, that gets harder and harder to retain the ones that you have, and they're critical.
I mean, unfortunately, how many stories have we talked about a shortage, whether it's any kind of public service profession, right? We hear it in law enforcement and first responders and air traffic controllers and other essential public service work. And Karen Fye, not in that bite that we just played there, but earlier in our conversation, she brought up this same point. She said, it's hard to keep the folks who are in sometimes, and then it becomes this exacerbating challenge where you're trying to get new people in the profession to fill the hole, fill the shortage, but I come to you and say, hey, Cheryl, I got a job for you. And you say, okay, what's the deal? What's it about?
What do you
And
need
say,
from
well,
me?
You're gonna have plenty of work to do because
Yeah.
there's a big shortage.
No doubt.
That is an added hurdle that recruiters have to face. But we are seeing some numbers from the FAA that I think they would say offer some encouragement.
Okay.
And it's a good point to bring them in here. The FAA and some exchanges that we've had with them, they say that they have rolled out what they call the Supercharge, that's their word for it, a Supercharge hiring initiative. In the latest round that just wrapped up, this was back on March 17th at close, the FAA says they got more than 10,000 applications to become an air traffic controller, and more than 8,000 of them were referred to testing. Big numbers, right?
So they move through the first step of the process, and we heard Mr. Duffy say they need 3,000, so 8,000 is a good starting number to work with.
Sounds good. If you're just doing back of the envelope math, you might say, okay, boom, problem solved, right?
Yeah, not so easy.
And of course, when we work these stories, we want to point to solutions and ways and the people who are working to fix it. That's why we went down to Dodge County to talk with Tyler and Angela and the folks at Middle Georgia State. They and a whole bunch of others are part of this sort of framework of a lot of different efforts that the FAA and the Transportation Department are trying to roll out to fill this gap, but it takes time to get these controllers. It's not like you walk in the door and you are good to go to work at the tower in Atlanta. It can be a years-long process to get there.
Interesting. You may be thinking what I was asking. I'm like, well, how much money are these people getting paid if we're talking about literally safety in every part of their job and something that can happen in a matter of seconds. So when it's that high pressure and that high demand, is the salary high to match?
You know, so Tyler Malik Harden, who we talked to in our story, and you saw him there, he was in the midst of a put air quotes here, training exercise, but he's controlling real airplanes under the supervision of certified instructors and certified controllers there. I asked him, you know, what are you looking forward to? And he said, I'm looking forward to getting my first job. And his instructors were saying he can expect, you know, probably about $80,000+ a year right out the jump. But air traffic control jobs can become much more lucrative than that. We're talking a 6-figure job in a lot of places, but it comes with big time stress too.
Yeah, 80,000 as a starting salary in Dodge County. So then you just think about what a Detroit, an Atlanta, big places.
And to be clear, he wouldn't be starting in Dodge County. He'd be going somewhere
That's just where
else.
he's getting trained.
But the neat thing about what they do at Middle Georgia State and about 7 other schools in the country, they're the first in Georgia to do this, one of the first in the country. When you get this enhanced FAA certification, basically, as a school, your students who go through that program now, when they graduate, get to skip the FAA Academy. So then they go straight into an FAA tower where they start their on-site training. So it's all part of this effort to streamline the process, get people trained up and in the door quickly. But keeping track of actually who is coming in and out of the door can be a little bit of a challenge, particularly because you're talking about a workforce of about 14,000 people right now. There's a shortage, people hit retirement ages. It's a lot to keep track of, and it is very much a live issue. We actually saw this take place on Capitol Hill recently. This is an exchange between Georgia's Democratic Congressman Hank Johnson and the U.S. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy. Take a look.
Can you tell this committee how many air traffic controllers have left the FAA since January 20th of 2025?
I don't.
And please don't tell me you don't know.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know that. But what I can tell you is that
This is such an important job. It's such.
Well, Congressman, I would say that we have new controllers that come in every month, and controllers are eligible for retirement, so they leave.
But are you trying to tell us that you don't know how many air traffic controllers are in the building, and how many have left the building? How many are getting ready to come into the building?
They're not in the building. They're in towers and
Well, I'm
centers
just
and
speaking
trade cons.
figuratively.
Yeah, no. So what I can tell you is what I've done to keep those controllers from retirement when they're at the age of retirement, and the 56 is the age of retirement, but a lot of them can retire at 50, 51. We're asking them to stay on, and we're driving more controllers into the academy and out to be trained. And so, again, I can't force people to stay beyond their age of retirement.
Let me move on. I appreciate it.
Well, you sure feel the emotion around it, and Secretary Duffy just talking about this is an always changing environment, but the congressman saying these are numbers we should know. We need to know how many job openings there are on any given moment when this is something that affects public safety to this degree.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, you got to always put the caveat too. These congressional hearings, there's a little bit of theater involved from both parties and both kind of participants in these conversations, but it is a serious issue, and it is one that gets to, I think, something a lot of travelers think about, even in the back of their mind when they go through the airport, when they're traveling. The FAA experts, researchers, they would all point out, and rightly so, air travel in the United States is the safest in the world, and it has gotten substantially safer over the past roughly half a century. But this report that Karen Fye was a part of, in one of their sort of top line quotes from the leader of that group, I'm paraphrasing, but he made the point, he said, things are safe, we're proud of this, but there are course corrections needed to make sure it stays that way long term. Because this shortage, it did not come out of nowhere.
You were talking about the number of jobs currently open, and that's one part of it, but we heard Secretary Duffy talking about those who are on the cusp of retiring too. We see this in a lot of different industries across the country, so this is another thing, and he was talking about asking those individuals to stay on a little longer, maybe mentor this younger generation, because there is this gap. So there's really two parts of this equation. Nothing's easily solved.
And you heard the secretary there talk about one of the efforts he is working on is trying to keep some of those more senior controllers in the towers, in the TRACONs, in the air route traffic control centers. It is an effort that is still kind of a little bit underway right now. But it is, in this industry, particularly important because there's a lot of on-the-job training that happens. They actually have two designations when you look at the staffing levels. They have what's called a CPC, which is a Certified Professional Controller, but then there's a CPC-IT, which is Certified Professional Controller in Training. I mean, it's such an integral part of this process that it is, like in a lot of things in government, there's an acronym for it. The issue is when you have a full-time professional controller, professional air traffic controller in the training seat, they're not controlling as many planes because, of course, some of their focus is dedicated to the person they're training.
Sure.
So it's a little bit of a chicken and egg challenge. And this shortage, it didn't come out of nowhere. It's been brewing for decades. In part because Karen Fye and these other researchers said some things you might expect. We've had a couple government shutdowns over the last
Federal
two
workers.
decades. We had, of course, COVID, which created innumerable disruptions. This is data from that report that Karen Fye was a part of. She said that, and I should say the report said, from fiscal year 2013 to 2023, the FAA hired only 2/3 of the controllers that they were targeting to hire.
So this was a snowball that they saw coming down the mountain.
At least should have seen.
Perhaps saw, but should have seen. I guess then the questions that continue to happen are, was there the appropriate response? Why weren't those filled? Because now it is something that can't be ignored. Traveling is just a part of everyday life for so many people. And we see it even more now after the pandemic. People are not just vacationing more, but business travel has picked up as well. So this can't be an if, this must be a when.
Yeah, and I think the Transportation Secretary would echo that. I think just about everybody who's in the air travel world would say, yeah, that's the goal we're working towards. You talk about business travel, recreational travel, vacation travel. One of the things you and I report on a lot is the very legitimate frustration travelers feel when there are delays, right? One of the things that Karen Fye said, the researcher Karen Fye said, is a much more common result of these shortages is delays. You know, when we said, is this a safety issue? She said, not yet, which of course is good. That's the answer you want. You want to know. But that's because she said these traffic control facilities, they'll start to throttle how many flights are moving in and out. If they get to a point where they're thinking, we might be overwhelmed here, they throttle it down, that looks like flight delays. So there are real impacts that people are feeling from this.
I was thinking we a while ago were talking about that midair collision over DC. And that story was devastating on so many levels, but also because there are hundreds, thousands of flights taking place every day all around the world, but rarely do you hear about something like that because of these controllers who are staffed and doing the work they need to do. So the convenience is one part of that, but I just don't want to lose sight of the safety part of that. It's like you only see something top of mind when it goes wrong.
And that's, I mean, they're doing the job at a remarkably high level. And we should point out, too, that crash that happened over the Potomac in D.C., NTSB, the National Transportation Safety Bureau, they're still investigating.
Yeah,
so
we don't know if it's a tower issue.
And there's been speculation about all sorts of things.
Yeah.
We don't want to do that.
Don't draw a straight line there.
Yeah.
But we do not hear of incidents like that very often because that's working.
I'm smiling just a little bit because I'm thinking about something Professor Fye said. She called it the Swiss cheese model of disaster prevention. And the idea is that when you're working in an environment that is high stakes, that is important, where lives are on the line, you want to have as many redundancies as you can stacked on top of each other. And so if you almost think like a stack of Swiss cheese, a disaster only happens when the holes all align. And so you try to have as many layers as possible.
Right.
And this is working right now.
Yeah.
It is largely working.
Yeah.
What she pointed out is, and others have pointed out, is you just want to make sure all those stacks stay at the right height. And when you start to peeling off layers, when you're short-staffed, when other things are happening, it just can make that stack a little thinner and maybe increase the likelihood of those holes lining up, which you, of course, never want to have happen. But I think this is a good place to turn here to Angela Taylor. She's the tower control chief at Middle Georgia State University. She was one of the instructors teaching Tyler Malik Harden and a whole bunch of other students who've gone through that program. And we asked her about this. We said, I said, do you get overwhelmed? Do you get stressed out? I mean, this is a high-stress job. How do you do it? This was what she said.
You do what you have to do, and you because it's not as if you're, if you mess up, the stakes are not low. They're very high. So I think that for controllers, even if the manning is low, even if whatever it is, the controller is going to control. I mean, they just are, and they're not going to be stuck on the idea of, oh, we need more people. They're going to work. They're going to work and do what they need to do to make sure that they separate aircraft and keep everybody safe.
So obviously we work these stories, we look into the stuff, and when there are issues, and there is an issue here, everybody's sounding the alarm, there is a shortage. But you also get a chance to hear from some really dedicated folks who are working in these towers, working in these facilities, who are training the next generation, like Angela Taylor, and who are the next generation, like Tyler. It's a challenge for sure, but there are people working to get things right. It just might be, it might be a while.
Yeah, and if there's anyone out there who's looking for a high stakes, high impact, making a difference kind of profession,
they are hiring.
They are hiring, and maybe that's for you. Zach, such an important conversation to have. Appreciate all the research you've done on this.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Thanks so much. All right. As always, we want to remind everyone that if you have a tip about any specific issue for Zach or anything else going on in and around your community, make sure you reach out to the team. You can give them a call, 404-873-9111, or email investigates@11alive.com. Thanks so much for joining Inside 11 Alive News Investigates. We'll see you next time.